I always felt like my life was somehow split right down the middle, as if someone had taken a giant pair of scissors and sliced everything clean through the center. On one side was my dad, living in a small apartment in Richmond, Virginia, more than 200 kilometers away from my mom. On the other side was my mom's house, in a suburban neighborhood near Baltimore, Maryland. I grew up in that constant back and forth, bags packed and unpacked, clothes forgotten in one place, notebooks forgotten in another, birthdays divided into two smaller cakes, two versions of the story of my life. But the truth is, even with that split, I still felt more whole at my dad's house. Everything there was simple, calm. Sometimes he brought me hot chocolate, saying he'd spent the whole day wondering whether I was eating well. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me feel like someone actually cared about me. My mom's house was different, very different. She was the type of woman who woke up worried about her own image. I don't say that as an insult. It's just that everything revolved around it. The hairstyle, the makeup, the outfit, the bathroom lighting. She photographed everything. Content, she called it. I remember her saying, around 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, "Don't touch that window. The light is perfect right here." When she met her new husband, everything got worse. His name was Daniel Carter, but I never knew him as Daniel. To me, he was always the man who took my mother's place inside her own house. He spoke slowly, always calculating his words, like he was planning a strategy. And it didn't take long for me to notice that everything about him was about control. He didn't control big things. Not at first. He controlled small details as if he were testing boundaries. For example, the TV volume, how I sat at the table, how I was supposed to wear my hair, literally. One time he said, walking past me in the kitchen, "Your hair looks more presentable tied back. Keep it that way." I should have said something, but nothing came out at the moment. The worst part was that my mom agreed with everything he said. Sometimes she didn't even wait for him to speak. She already looked at me with that impatient expression, as if I were the invisible obstacle in the perfect life she wanted to build with him. Their house was big, with a well-kept garden and a living room full of new family photos. They even had a huge framed picture near the stairs, with everyone smiling in some perfect insurance commercial style. I wasn't in that photo. Not even on the day they took it, because it was all last minute, according to my mom. But I knew that was a lie. I knew because I found their matching outfits tossed in the laundry basket. Sometimes I felt like walking into that house was like stepping under an invisible sign that said, "Be discreet, don't bother anyone, don't take up too much space." Daniel had 2 sons, an older boy named Hunter and a younger one named Lucas. They spoke loudly, slammed doors, barged into my room whenever they wanted, and when I complained, Daniel would say, with that calm that irritated me, "They're just kids. You need to be more patient." I remember clearly one night around 9 o'clock, when my mom was sitting on the couch with Daniel, both of them laughing at a joke from a TV show. I tried to get close to tell her something that had happened at school, but before I could open my mouth, she extended her hand toward me as if shooing away a mosquito. "Not now, tell me later," she said. The strangest part was that when I went to my dad's house, it took me a while to get used to the lack of heaviness in my chest. It took a few hours before I realized I didn't have to measure my steps or choose my words there. And every time it was time to go back to Baltimore, the same thought repeated, "I don't want to go back." But I always went back. I just didn't know everything was about to get worse. Much worse. Right after Daniel moved permanently into my mom's house, something there began to take shape. The favoritism wasn't dramatic at first. It was subtle, almost elegant, like it had been rehearsed. For example, at breakfast. Daniel always made pancakes for the boys, 3 for each with chocolate chips. He placed their plates on the table with a proud smile, as if it were some important fatherly ritual. For me, he left a bowl of plain cereal, nothing special, and said, "That's enough for someone your age." I remember one morning, a little after 7, when I asked if I could have pancakes too, and he answered without even looking up from the newspaper, "Pancakes are for people who need energy to start the day. You don't need that much." My mom didn't say anything. She just kept fixing her eyeliner. Once the youngest put my sketchbook in the washing machine, and when I went to complain, Daniel just crossed his arms and said, "You need to learn to protect your belongings. They're kids. They don't know any better." And my mom added, as if it were some kind of moral lesson, "Maybe it's good for you to learn not to get too attached to things." I wanted to say it wasn't things. They were my drawings, my ideas, my only spaces where I still felt whole. Another thing that got to me was how they all went out together all the time. Dinners, park outings, movies. Sometimes I just heard the keys jangling, and when I asked where they were going, my mom would say, "We're just running some errands. You don't need to come." but she got too dressed up for someone who was just running errands. One day I saw them coming back with shopping bags and half-finished milkshakes. Lucas carried a toy sword, and Hunter was laughing at something Daniel said. When I walked past them, my mom only said, "Oh, you already had dinner, right?" I hadn't eaten at all, but I didn't want to explain. Over time, I became like an object left in a corner, useful only when they needed someone to close a door or grab something upstairs. Not that they ever asked nicely, "Bring that, close that, be quiet." Still, when my mom announced we would be taking a trip together, me, her, Daniel, and the boys, some part of me, the most desperate part, thought maybe this would be a chance to regain some space. "It'll be good for all of us," she said. "A week away from everything, enjoying some time together." And Daniel confirmed with that calculated smile, "This time, we'll include everyone." I should have noticed how strange that sentence was. This time, as if excluding me before had been normal. The preparation started fast. They discussed the best destination, looked up hotels, compared photos of beaches and trails. I sat on the couch, watching everything from a distance, trying not to look anxious. Daniel finally asked if I wanted to pick out a few outfits for the trip. "Sure," I said, and he replied, "Dry, nothing flashy." Even so, going to the stores with my mom that day made me believe that maybe, just maybe, I was about to be included in something. She even seemed excited, trying on dresses and occasionally asking if I thought this or that outfit was more appropriate. It was rare, extremely rare, for her to ask my opinion about anything. I had no idea how quickly everything was about to fall apart. That afternoon started out normal. It was around 2 in the afternoon when we left the house to buy some clothes for the trip. My mom was in a good mood, talking about bikinis, sunscreen, about how maybe it would be good to get away from everything for a bit. I walked beside her carrying shopping bags that, in the end, were almost all hers. Still, I was fine, or at least trying to be. When she said we could stop at a store just to look at some cute things for you to take. I picked 2 tops and a pair of shorts. Nothing special, but it was more than I usually had the right to choose. My mom even smiled when she saw them. Then, when we were heading home, the traffic was slow. I stared out the window, thinking about the hotel, imagining what it would be like to sleep in a shared room with Daniel's kids, trying to believe I would have a place. And then everything happened too fast. A loud noise behind us, a force pushing the whole car forward, and a sharp crack in my arm, like something had opened inside it. My head hit the headrest. I heard my mom scream, more a scream of shock than pain. I felt the car stop, then everything went quiet. When I realized what had happened, my arm felt strange, like it wasn't mine. The pain came strong. All I could say was, "Mom, I think it hurts." People started appearing, asking if we were okay. My mom kept repeating, just a scare, but when she looked at me and saw my arm, her face changed, went pale. The ambulance arrived quickly. The siren wouldn't stop. They put me on a stretcher, and while they carried me, I tried to follow my mom's face as she walked beside me. The hospital was maybe 20 minutes away, give or take. When they put me in that overly bright room, I felt small, fragile. The doctor spoke quickly, with words I tried to understand. Fracture, mild concussion, observation, monitoring. My mom paced around the room. She looked nervous, but not exactly because of me. She kept saying things like, "I can't believe this happened now, right now." And I realized she wasn't talking about my arm. When Daniel arrived, he walked into the room like he was inspecting mechanical damage. No hug, no, "How are you?" He looked at me, then at my mom, then at his phone. "So?" he asked. "Did the doctor say how long she needs to stay?" My mom answered awkwardly. "They said she needs a few days of observation, maybe 2 or 3. Daniel sighed as if carrying the weight of the world. 2 or 3 days? He repeated. "But our trip is tomorrow morning." A fear hit me that had nothing to do with my arm. A fear of being left behind, of being discarded. My mom tried to argue, but Daniel rubbed his face and said, "We spent a lot on this trip. The boys are excited. The flights aren't refundable." Then he looked at me like I was an unavoidable inconvenience. "She's safe here. There are doctors, nurses, and she's old enough to stay alone for a while." I felt tears rising. "Mom, I don't want to stay alone." She looked at me, and for a second I saw something in her face. Guilt, maybe, or fear of Daniel, or both. "I know, sweetie, but everything will be fine." Daniel cut her off. "There's no reason to ruin the trip for everyone. She'll be fine." And that's when I realized he wasn't asking. He was deciding. And my mom was already giving in. "Don't leave me here, please." But they didn't answer. They just exchanged looks, weighing what was most convenient. In that heavy silence, I understood. I wasn't a priority. I never had been. Update 1. I didn't know exactly how much time had passed since the accident. Maybe hours. My mom paced around the room as if trying to find an excuse to stay with me, or an excuse to leave without looking too cruel. Maybe I can stay with her just until tomorrow, she said. Just until I'm sure she's stable. Daniel responded immediately, firm. And miss the whole first day? You know how expensive it is to reschedule things. Then he added, lower, thinking I wouldn't hear. Besides, the boys will throw a fit if their mom stays stuck here. My mom sat beside me and held my hand, but it felt empty, almost automatic. I'll come back to see you as soon as I can, she said. Don't leave me, I repeated, but she looked away. And that's when I knew that despite my fear, despite my pain, despite my begging, she was already gone. They decided to go. The first night alone in the hospital, time didn't move. Every now and then, a younger nurse came in to check my vitals. She asked, "Are you okay?" And I answered, "Yes, I'm okay." But I wasn't. I tried to find my phone to message my dad, or someone, anyone, but it had disappeared in the accident, probably fallen inside the car or onto the street, and I didn't know my dad's number by heart. I fell asleep and woke up in short intervals. The nurse who had taken care of me the most the night before walked into the room. She had a calm presence. She placed my meal tray and watched me silently. "Doesn't anyone come to visit you?" she asked. I froze. I didn't want to admit it. It felt like saying it aloud would make everything even more real. "My mom had to travel," I said, embarrassed by my own words. She frowned. "And you've been here alone since yesterday?" "Yes." "But you have another guardian? Father? Grandparents? Someone?" "I have my dad, but I don't know his number by heart." The nurse stepped closer, her expression stern and gentle at the same time. "Then we're going to find him," she said. "I'm not letting you spend another night here like this." She left and came back with a phone. She said she'd call the hospital in my dad's city to see if they could find contact information for him. She managed to get the number of the department where he worked, and then his voice. My dad saying his full name, with that worried tone I'd known since I was little. The nurse quickly explained that I was hospitalized, that I'd been in an accident, that I was alone. His voice came through firm, heavy, almost filled with controlled anger. "Put her on the line, please." When the nurse handed me the phone, I said, "Dad," and I started crying. "Your mom left you alone?" I took a moment to answer. She went on the trip." "Trip?" he repeated, incredulous. "And she left you there? With a broken arm?" "She said I'd be safe, that there were nurses." "I'm coming," he said. "Now, I don't care how long it takes. Stay calm. I'll be with you. I promise." The next hours were strange. I was nervous, anxious, relieved, and ashamed, all at once. When my dad finally walked into the hospital, it must have been night already. He opened the door gently. "I'm here," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." He talked to the doctors, asked the questions no one else had bothered to ask. Questions about my pain, the concussion risks, my levels, the exams. Then, when everything calmed down, he pulled up a chair and sat beside me. "You're not going back to that house. I'm not letting them abandon you again." I looked at my dad and could only say one thing: "Don't leave me alone." The days after my dad arrived were confusing. He spent the whole night there, sleeping awkwardly in the chair. When I woke up, he was speaking softly with a doctor in the hallway, asking how many more days of observation I needed, how recovery would work, when I could go home. To his home, not my mom's. The doctor said I needed at least another day. I could tell from his face that didn't settle whatever was burning inside him. The next morning, around 10, he asked to talk to me with the door closed. He sat on the edge of my bed. I reported the case. My heart jumped. Reported what? Everything. The abandonment, the accident, the fact that you were left here alone. I called Child Protective Services. "Dad, what if no one believes me?" "They will," he said. "And even if someone tries to doubt it, I'll be here. I won't let anyone twist anything." It calmed me and terrified me at the same time, because part of me wanted justice, but another part feared my mother's reaction. The first social worker visit started the next day, when I was more alert. A woman with short hair and a clipboard asked questions that felt too direct. "Was your mother with you at the hospital right after the accident? Was any guardian present during the night after admission? Do you feel safe in your mother's and stepfather's home? Have there been other situations where you felt neglected or intimidated in that environment?" I answered slowly, measuring every word, afraid of sounding dramatic. It was strange how, even after being abandoned in a hospital, I still felt obligated to protect my mother somehow. The social worker wrote everything down patiently. Hours later, the phone in my room rang. It was odd. No one ever called there. My dad was in the cafeteria, so I answered alone. It was my mom. Her voice was sugary sweet, too sweet, like she was someone else. "Sweetie, how are you?" I was so worried. The sentence sounded rehearsed. "You left me here," I said. She sighed, as if I had ruined her script. "I know, and I've apologized, but listen, I need you to talk to those people from social services. Tell them everything is fine, that there was no abandonment, that it was all a misunderstanding." "You want me to lie?" "It's not a lie," she said quickly. "It's just avoiding problems. You know how these cases are. They can ruin a family's life over a detail." Family. She used that word like I was still part of the one she had chosen. "Daniel is devastated," she continued. "He thinks you're trying to harm him. He could barely enjoy the trip after what happened." I felt heat rise in my chest. "Me? I'm trying to harm him? Don't talk like that. You know he has a sensitive temperament. And what if the kids get dragged into this? What if they take them away from him? Do you want that on your conscience?" There it was. She was trying to put the blame on me. "Mom, I was alone, with a broken arm, and you—" "I already said I'm sorry," she interrupted. "But you need to understand there are consequences bigger than you think. You could ruin all our lives. I need you to cooperate. When the social worker talks to you again, say Daniel wanted to stay, but I insisted he go. Say you agreed to it. Say you weren't in pain. Say anything that doesn't put us at risk." "I'm not going to lie," I said, firm. "You will," she said, cold, "or you'll destroy your own family." And then she hung up. When my dad returned and saw my face, he immediately knew something had happened. I told him everything, word for word. "They're going to try to blame you, but you're not at fault." When the social worker came back the next day, I told the truth, all of it, without hiding anything. My voice came out steady. She listened to everything, didn't interrupt, only wrote notes. In the end, she put her hand on my shoulder and said, "You did the right thing." Update 2. In the following days, my mom sent guilt-heavy messages saying I was exaggerating, that I didn't know what I was doing, that there would be serious consequences. She called my dad screaming, saying he was poisoning me against her. Meanwhile, another social worker came to speak with me. This one more direct. He asked about my routine at my mom's house, how Daniel talked to me, what the boys were like, the small humiliations I thought no one noticed. He even asked about meals and about the times I stayed home alone while they went out. I always tried to minimize those things, but when I had to put them into words, I realized they weren't small. They were constant. They were painful. And when I was discharged with my arm still immobilized, my dad took me to his home in Richmond. He drove slowly, asking if I wanted to stop for food, if I needed pain medication. That night, sitting on my dad's couch, he said, "You don't have to go back there." The first days in Richmond were quiet. My discharge had been recent, so my body still felt strange, heavy. My immobilized arm reminded me I was still hurt. Starting at the new school a few weeks later was another battle. I was terrified of being the new girl, but slowly, some people started talking to me. The first was a boy who sat behind me in literature class. He had an easygoing vibe, silly jokes, and lent me a pencil on the first day, even though I hadn't asked. Then came a girl with colorful braids who invited me to sit with her at lunch when she noticed I was wandering from table to table, afraid to stop at any of them. My birthday came soon after. My dad made a simple chocolate frosted cake. He gave me a small present, a book I'd always wanted, and said he was proud of me, not because of the accident or what I'd endured, but because I didn't give in to the pressure to lie. I cried. But even with all that, my own bed, my own room, a calmer routine, the ghosts kept showing up. Sometimes it was a quick thought, almost guilt, telling me I should have tried harder to make her like me. It was irrational, I knew. Meanwhile, on the other side, in that Baltimore house, things began falling apart faster than I expected. I heard through distant relatives and a chatty aunt that Daniel's sons were having trouble at school. The older one, Hunter, got suspended for shoving a classmate. The younger, Lucas, was piling up complaints for aggressive behavior and bad grades. There was also news that Daniel's ex-wife had filed for custody review. And soon enough, social workers began investigating his behavior too, not just toward me, but toward his own kids. The irony was bitter. He had said I could ruin their lives. I hadn't done anything, but their truth was surfacing on its own. Eventually, I learned the custody battle got ugly. Screaming, fights, accusations, the sort of thing my mom always tried to hide from the world. as if her life were a staged photo and not a real story with deep flaws. And then came the news of the divorce. My mom called me one evening. "They took his kids away," she said immediately. "And it's your fault." My breath caught. "What? You exposed that situation. You turned the social workers against us. If you had cooperated, none of this would have happened. Now everything fell on me. Daniel is devastated and I'm alone." It hit like a slap. I stayed silent. "I hope you're happy," she continued. "You destroyed everyone's lives." "I didn't destroy anything. The truth just showed up." She hung up on me. I didn't cry. Maybe because I had already cried enough. A few weeks later, I received a short message. "When you want to come see me, you know where I live." I didn't respond. And for the first time in my life, that decision, to keep my distance, didn't hurt like it used to. It was as if I finally understood that no bond is worth my sanity. I remembered the white hospital room, the silence of the door closing behind my mom, the empty space beside my bed. My mom, on the other hand, became a shadow of the woman I remembered. The first time I saw her after everything, months later, she was thinner, paler, with deep dark circles and her hair tied carelessly. She met me holding a shopping bag she insisted on bringing as a gift, even knowing that wasn't what I needed. "You've changed," she said, and I replied, "I just stopped being afraid." She didn't like the answer, but she didn't argue either. Meanwhile, my life with my dad slowly settled into place. It wasn't easy. Nothing ever is as easy as it seems. I started thinking about the future for the first time. I thought about courses, colleges, possibilities. I met new people at school, joined clubs, helped with projects. I made friends who asked how I was doing. I stayed away from my mom, not out of revenge, not out of constant anger, but because her presence was still a place where I shrank. Today, I see everything differently. I see that family isn't just who raises you, or who shares your name, or who looks good in pictures. And I finally understood that leaving a place where you only existed as leftover isn't selfish. It's courage.